Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction created for entertainment. All characters, companies, properties, legal situations, financial details, and events are invented or dramatized. Any resemblance to real people, businesses, or circumstances is purely coincidental. Story: millionaire husband's mistress took his pregnant wife's seat until grandma shouted, "Get up." Stay with this story, because when a millionaire let his mistress sit beneath his 8-month pregnant wife's name, grandma's 2-word command was only the beginning. The chair was humiliating. What Ethan had quietly taken from Claire's work, confidence, and future was worse. If stories about family, dignity, and consequences speak to you, subscribe and tell me in the comments. Would you fight for the seat or decide the whole table no longer deserved you? The chandeliers of the Grand Bellamy Hotel burned above 300 guests when Claire Bennett entered the ballroom with one hand beneath her belly and the other holding a small silver purse. At 8 months pregnant, she had learned to move carefully, especially in heels, but there was nothing hesitant about the way she carried herself. Her honey blonde hair fell in soft waves over a midnight blue maternity gown. People who had known her for years smiled when they saw her. Then several of those smiles disappeared. Claire followed their eyes to the center table. Her husband, Ethan Bennett, sat beneath a wall of gold letters celebrating 50 years of Bennett Properties. Ethan was 39, handsome in the polished, expensive way business magazines loved. He had inherited a regional real estate company and turned it into a national developer. For 6 years, Claire had been his wife. For almost 8 months, she had been carrying their daughter. Beside him sat Vanessa Cole, Ethan's mistress. Claire stopped walking. Vanessa wore crimson. Her dark hair was swept over one shoulder, and her hand rested near Ethan's champagne glass with the relaxed confidence of someone who believed the room already belonged to her. Under the edge of Vanessa's black clutch, Claire could see a white place card. Claire Bennett. Vanessa had not taken an empty chair. She had taken Claire's assigned place and left the name visible. The baby moved. Claire pressed her palm to the kick. "I know, sweetheart," she whispered. Ethan finally looked up. His expression was not guilt. It was irritation. "You came. Please what? Don't make a scene." He lowered his voice. "It's one chair. One chair." Claire had heard him say almost the same thing at a family brunch 3 weeks earlier when Vanessa had taken her usual place beside him. It was just a seat. It was just dinner. It was just business. Claire had learned that people who wanted to make cruelty sound reasonable loved the word just. The banquet captain began lowering the extra chair. Bang! The silver tip of a cane struck the marble floor. The orchestra stopped in the middle of a song. At the ballroom entrance stood Margaret Bennett, 78 years old. Silver hair, black evening gown, steel blue eyes. Ethan's grandmother had spent 40 years watching Bennett Properties grow from a family operation into a company with towers, hotels, and luxury developments in half a dozen states. She rarely raised her voice because she rarely needed to. Tonight, she crossed the ballroom one measured step at a time. Tap, tap, tap. Ethan went pale. "Grandmother." Margaret reached the table. She looked at Claire's belly first, then the place card, then Vanessa. Finally, she looked at Ethan. Her cane struck the floor again. "Get up." Vanessa immediately pushed back her chair. Margaret did not turn toward her. "I wasn't talking to you." The entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. Margaret pointed the cane at her grandson. "You, Ethan. Get up." Ethan's face changed. "Grandmother, this is ridiculous." "Then standing should be easy." He rose slowly. Margaret pulled out Ethan's chair and looked at Claire. "Sit." Claire hesitated. Margaret's expression softened by 1 degree. "You have been standing long enough." Claire lowered herself into Ethan's chair. A murmur moved through the room. Vanessa was still sitting beneath Claire's name. Ethan was standing beside both women. For the first time all evening, the arrangement looked exactly as wrong as it was. Ethan glanced at the phones lifting around the ballroom. "Can we not turn a seating mistake into a circus?" Margaret looked at him. "Mistakes are accidental." Then she picked up Claire's place card from beneath Vanessa's purse. "This was changed through your office." Ethan's jaw tightened. Margaret continued. "And the woman whose name is on this card is not here merely because she married you." Claire frowned. Margaret turned toward the stage, where a large photograph showed one of Bennett Properties' most famous projects. Harbor House, a neglected 1920s hotel Claire had helped redesign years earlier. Tonight's founder's tribute was supposed to recognize the people who saved that building, Margaret said. Claire was one of them. Vanessa looked at Ethan. Claire felt suddenly off balance for a different reason. She had not known the tribute was for her. Margaret set the card in front of Claire. You moved the woman who helped create the reason half this room is celebrating tonight. Ethan's face hardened. Grandmother, we can discuss this privately. Oh, we will. Margaret's voice became quiet. Especially the consulting contracts your office approved for Miss Cole's firm, without the review our policies required. Vanessa's glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Claire looked at Ethan. He stared at Margaret. There was no shout now. No theater. Only fear. Margaret nodded once. That conversation will happen Monday, with counsel and the independent directors. Not here. Then she looked at Claire. And whether you stay at this table is your decision. That was the moment Claire understood what Grandma Bennett had really done. She had not rescued Claire. She had returned the choice. 6 months earlier, Claire had still believed there were explanations for everything. At 2 months pregnant, she was tired enough to fall asleep on the sofa before dinner and emotional enough to cry over a commercial about a lost dog. Ethan noticed those things and used them later, but in the beginning Claire still trusted him. The first lie arrived at 1:17 in the morning. Running late. Don't wait up. Claire stared at the message from bed. Ethan's side was cold. Rain tapped against the windows of their Connecticut home. When he came in after 2, he smelled faintly of perfume. Office? Claire asked. Where else? He kissed her forehead and disappeared into the shower. 2 weeks later, Claire found a restaurant receipt in his jacket. 2 entrees. 2 drinks. 1 dessert. Ethan had told her he had been entertaining a dozen investors. Who were you with? She asked at breakfast. He barely looked at the receipt. Client. 1 client. Claire. He sighed. You've been anxious lately. She waited. His eyes dropped to the small curve beneath her sweater. Pregnancy does that. Claire felt the insult before she could name it. My pregnancy didn't order the wine. Ethan pushed back his chair. I'm not doing this before work. Then came Vanessa. She had joined Bennett Properties as a branding consultant, then became so visible that employees began assuming she worked directly for Ethan. 31, polished, strategic, always perfectly dressed. At first, she treated Claire with careful friendliness. Then she stopped bothering. A hand on Ethan's shoulder during photographs. Private laughter at dinners. Late-night calls that ended when Claire entered a room. One afternoon, Claire found a gold earring beneath the passenger seat of Ethan's Mercedes. She placed it on the kitchen counter. What is this? Ethan glanced at it. Probably yours. My ears aren't pierced. For 1 second, his face emptied. Then he laughed. Vanessa borrowed the car after a client meeting. You let Vanessa drive your car? His voice changed. Are we really going to interrogate each other over an earring? That word again. Interrogate. Claire had asked one question. Ethan turned it into a character flaw. She stopped asking. Not because she believed him, because she began paying attention to what happened when he thought she had stopped. Claire was not a corporate lawyer. She was an architect. Before marriage, she had specialized in historic restoration. When Bennett Properties bought Harbor House, the company planned to gut the interior and turn it into another glass and marble luxury hotel. Claire argued for restoration instead. She spent nights studying original blueprints. She found a way to preserve the grand staircase, the ballroom ceiling, and the old brick facade while modernizing the building. Her design became the project that changed Bennett Properties' reputation. After she married Ethan, she worked less. At first it was a choice. Then, slowly, choice became expectation. Ethan began introducing her as my wife, instead of the architect who saved Harbor House. Claire told herself it did not matter. By the time she became pregnant, she had not accepted a major project in almost a year. Ethan liked that version of her. Available. Quiet. Easy to place. The affair changed something. Claire created a private email account. She saved copies of household records she was entitled to see. She photographed receipts before they disappeared. She wrote down dates. One evening, while reviewing a shared tax folder, she saw invoices from Cole Strategy Group, Vanessa's company. The amounts were not spectacular individually. $38,000, $42,500, $36,750. But there were many of them, all labeled communications support for projects Claire knew already had outside marketing firms. She did not assume fraud. She did not post accusations. She did something much less dramatic. She called her attorney. Rachel Morgan had handled a contract dispute for Claire years earlier. Rachel now referred her to a family law colleague and advised her on what records Claire could properly keep. Do not access anything you are not authorized to access, Rachel told her. Do not guess. Preserve what is already yours to see. Claire followed that advice. Then she found something more personal than an invoice. Ethan's phone lit up on the kitchen counter while he was upstairs. Vanessa, same hotel Thursday? I miss you already. Claire did not touch the phone. She did not need to. She wrote down exactly what she had seen. The next morning, Ethan kissed her cheek and asked whether she wanted to order a crib. Claire looked at the man she had loved for 8 years. Yes, she said. What color? Natural wood. He smiled, relieved by the ordinary answer. He had no idea that later that afternoon Claire would meet a family law attorney named Rebecca Sloan and ask a question she had been afraid to say aloud. What would leaving actually look like? Rebecca did not tell her to leave. She did not tell her to stay. She explained process, finances, parenting, documents, safety, the difference between suspicion and evidence, the difference between a marriage ending emotionally and a court legally dissolving it. Claire left with no dramatic plan, only information. For the first time in months, information felt like oxygen. Vanessa did not want Ethan privately forever. She wanted the photograph, the invitation, the chair. Claire learned that slowly. At a Bennett family brunch, Vanessa arrived before her and sat beside Ethan at the long table in Margaret's sunroom. Claire had always sat there. Vanessa smiled. I hope you don't mind. Ethan kept cutting his steak. It's just a seat. Claire said elsewhere. Margaret noticed. She said nothing. But 3 weeks later, at a company reception, Vanessa wore an antique diamond bracelet Claire recognized from a jeweler's catalog. Ethan had shown it to Claire and said he wanted to give it to her after the baby arrived. Vanessa raised her wrist under the light. Beautiful, isn't it? Claire looked at Ethan. He stared into his drink. It is, Claire said. Vanessa leaned closer. Ethan has excellent taste. Claire smiled without warmth. He has a habit of promising the same thing twice. Then she walked away. Ethan confronted her in the car. What was that? The truth. You embarrassed Vanessa. Claire turned toward the window. Interesting. What? You noticed. He drove the rest of the way home in silence. The next escalation was not jewelry. It was work. Vanessa began appearing in photographs around Harbor House. She stood beside Ethan during an anniversary interview and spoke about the vision that transformed the property. Claire watched the clip alone. Vanessa had not been at Bennett Properties when Harbor House was restored. She had never seen the original blueprints. But Ethan did not correct her. A week later, Claire received a call from Daniel Mercer, an independent director who had known her since the restoration. I'm looking at some vendor invoices, he said. Did your design committee approve Cole Strategy Group for the Harbor Anniversary campaign? Claire sat very still. No, a pause. Were you asked? No. Daniel did not tell her what he suspected. Claire did not volunteer what she knew about the affair. She simply answered the questions she could answer. That call mattered later, because it meant the company's concerns did not begin with a jealous wife or an angry grandmother. They began with ordinary governance. Margaret learned about the invoices from Daniel. She also learned something else. The gala planning team had prepared a founder's tribute to Harbor House. The committee had selected Claire to sit at the head table as the project's original restoration architect and to receive a small recognition after dinner. Ethan never told her. 3 days before the gala, Vanessa called the event coordinator. Mr. Bennett wants a seating adjustment. The coordinator checked the chart. Mrs. Bennett is assigned beside him. Move her. We'll need confirmation. You have it. The coordinator had worked with Margaret for 22 years. She called her. Margaret listened without interrupting. Do not argue, she finally said. Keep the record of the request. Then Margaret asked one question. Was the change approved through Ethan's office? Yes. Margaret closed her eyes. The same executive office had approved several Cole Strategy Group invoices that were already under internal review. The seating change was not evidence of financial misconduct. Margaret understood that. But to her it revealed the same habit. Ethan had started treating authority as personal property. He wanted Vanessa beside him, so he changed the chart. He wanted invoices paid quickly, so his office bypassed the committee. He wanted Claire quiet, so he called her emotional. Every problem had a different scale. The attitude underneath was the same. That evening, Claire passed Ethan's study and heard Vanessa inside. If I'm going to be beside you privately, I will not stand behind her publicly. Ethan lowered his voice. Claire is pregnant. So, I'm not humiliating her right now. Vanessa laughed. You already are. Claire stopped in the hallway. Vanessa continued. The gala is Friday. 300 guests. Investors. Your family. I'm sitting beside you. That's Claire's seat. Then change it. A long silence. Claire waited for one word. No. It never came. Ethan finally said, I'll handle it. Claire walked upstairs. She did not cry until she reached the nursery. The room was unfinished. One wall had been painted pale cream. A flat-pack crib leaned against the baseboard. Claire sat on the floor beside it, her hand over her belly. For months she had thought the affair was the worst betrayal. It was not. The worst part was hearing how easily Ethan could discuss moving her out of her own place while she was carrying his child. Claire opened her phone and called Rebecca. I'm ready to move forward, she said. With filing. With preparing everything we need. I don't want surprises. Rebecca's answer was calm. Then we do it properly. Claire looked around the nursery. Properly, she repeated. Downstairs, Vanessa laughed at something Ethan said. Claire closed her eyes. Friday was coming. The ballroom remained silent after Margaret ordered Ethan to stand. Claire sat in his chair, one hand resting over the baby, while Vanessa remained in the seat bearing Claire's name. Ethan looked around at the guests. This is a family matter. Margaret's mouth tightened. You made it a public matter when you approved the seating change. She did not open a folder. She did not announce confidential accusations. She did not turn a gala into a courtroom. Instead, she looked toward Daniel Mercer, who was seated 2 tables away. Daniel, will the independent directors still meet Monday? Daniel rose. Yes. Will counsel be present? Yes. Margaret nodded. That is all this room needs to know. Ethan's shoulders loosened slightly. Then Vanessa spoke. What meeting? Nobody answered. She looked at Ethan. What meeting, Ethan? He kept his eyes on Margaret. Vanessa's confidence thinned. Is this about my company? Ethan's jaw clenched. Not now. Claire saw the fear appear on Vanessa's face. For months Vanessa had behaved as though Ethan owned every room he entered. The company, the family name, the money, the future. He had hidden a moment that belonged to Claire's own work. Margaret's voice softened. When Harbor House opened, your drawings were on the wall of my office for a year. No one has reached a final conclusion about the vendor issue. Margaret looked at Ethan. That is why there is a review. Claire appreciated the distinction. Facts before punishment. Review before accusation. It was the first adult thing anyone had said all night. Vanessa stood. I want to leave. Margaret did not stop her. Of course. Vanessa reached for her clutch. Then she looked at Ethan. You told me this was all settled. Ethan's face changed. Vanessa, you said the board didn't care about the contracts. Stop. You said nobody would question the Harbor invoices because you controlled the approvals. The nearest tables went still. Ethan stared at her. Stop talking. Vanessa's voice rose. You told me after the baby was born, you would divorce Claire by the Westport house and put me in charge of the national campaign. Claire's chest tightened. Not because the affair was new. Because hearing a timetable for the end of her marriage while her child moved inside her was a cruelty she had not prepared for. Ethan stepped toward Vanessa. That's enough. Vanessa laughed once, broken and angry. No. You told me everything would be ours. Margaret did not look triumphant. She looked tired. Daniel spoke quietly. I think this conversation should end here. Claire agreed. She opened her silver purse. Ethan noticed. What are you doing? Claire removed a cream envelope. Rebecca Sloan, family law. Ethan's face drained. No. Claire placed the envelope on the table. This is not service, she said. My lawyer will handle the legal process properly. Rebecca had warned her not to turn a dramatic moment into fake courtroom procedure. So what is it? Ethan asked. A letter telling you that I have retained counsel and that future communication about our separation and finances can go through the appropriate channels. Vanessa stared at Claire. You knew? For months. Then why didn't you confront me? Claire looked at her. Because I wasn't trying to win, Ethan. Vanessa flinched. Claire continued. I was trying to understand what I needed to protect our daughter and leave without destroying myself. Ethan reached for the envelope. Claire covered it with her palm. He stopped. It was a tiny movement. For years, she had surrendered small things to keep peace. The restaurant choice. The holiday schedule. The project she postponed because Ethan needed her at an event. The conversation she ended because his voice became cold. Tonight, she left her hand exactly where it was. Ethan looked at her. You've been planning this behind my back. Claire nearly laughed. You were planning my replacement in your study. Silence. You heard us. Yes. Vanessa looked away. Ethan's voice dropped. Claire, we can fix this. She studied him. What part? He had no answer. The affair, she asked. The lies? The contracts? The way you erased my work? The fact that you let another woman sit under my name and expected me to accept the chair at the end. Ethan's expression hardened. You're emotional. Margaret closed her eyes. Claire, surprisingly, smiled. There it is. What? The sentence that used to work. She picked up the place card. Claire Bennett. For a moment, she remembered the young architect who had spent nights at Harbor House with dust in her hair and measuring tape around her neck. That woman had existed before Ethan's surname was attached to hers. Claire removed her wedding ring. Ethan whispered, Don't. She placed it on the table. Not on Vanessa's plate. Not in Ethan's hand. Beside the card. You wanted my seat, Claire said to Vanessa. You can keep the chair. Then she looked at Ethan. But you do not get to decide where I go next. Margaret stood. I'll come with you. Claire touched her hand. No, Margaret searched her face. Claire smiled faintly. You already did enough. What will you do? Claire looked toward the ballroom doors. Walk. And she did. By breakfast the next morning, Ethan's office had received calls from investors, employees, and 2 local reporters. Someone had posted a short clip of Margaret's Get Up, and it was circulating fast. Claire never opened it. She did not need strangers replaying the worst 30 seconds of her marriage to tell her what had happened. She sat in Rebecca Sloane's office with a cup of tea cooling beside her and read each page before she signed anything. The separation process did not become real because she had walked out of a gala. It became real through ordinary steps. Counsel, filings, financial disclosures, temporary arrangements, and conversations about the child who would soon be born. Rebecca made that clear. Nothing important happens because a crowd saw you leave, she said. We do this carefully. Claire nodded. That's what I want. Across town, Ethan was learning the same lesson. Bennett Properties issued a restrained statement confirming that several vendor approvals were under independent review. It did not call Ethan a criminal. It did not announce that the company had collapsed. The board temporarily required an additional approval on certain contracts while the review continued. Ethan hated the restraint more than he would have hated a public fight. He could argue with outrage. He could not argue with procedure. Over the next several weeks, the independent review found that several Cole Strategy Group invoices had been approved outside the company's normal conflict review process. Some work had been legitimate. Other charges lacked the documentation the board expected. The company negotiated repayment of disputed amounts and ended the consulting relationship. Ethan was not led away in handcuffs. He did not lose every dollar. He did not wake up poor. He lost something more believable. Trust. The board removed him from one committee and limited his ability to approve related party vendors until governance changes were complete. He remained an executive and a major shareholder, but for the first time in years, people around him stopped treating his preference as a decision. Vanessa resigned from the account. Her relationship with Ethan ended within days. Claire did not celebrate. When Vanessa sent a brief message, "He lied to me too," Claire read it once and deleted it. Vanessa had been deceived about some things. She had still knowingly humiliated a pregnant wife. Both could be true. Claire moved into a rented 2-bedroom cottage near the Connecticut coast. Margaret offered her the Bennett guest house. Claire thanked her and declined. I need one place that doesn't come from Ethan's family, she said. Margaret understood. The cottage was small enough that the nursery and Claire's bedroom shared one wall. The kitchen cabinets were older than she was. On windy nights, the windows rattled. Claire loved it. She bought a second-hand drafting table and placed it near the brightest window. The first time she opened a roll of tracing paper across it, she cried. Not because she missed Ethan, because she missed herself. A former colleague called about a restoration project, an abandoned railway depot a town hoped to convert into a library and community hall. We heard you might be available, he said carefully. Claire looked around the cottage. A half-built crib stood in the nursery doorway. Her ankles were swollen. Her life was legally and emotionally unfinished. Yes, she said. I'm available. She worked 4 hours a day from home until her doctor told her to slow down. She drew doorways, windows, a reading room beneath old timber beams. For the first time in years, Nobody introduced her work as something Ethan Bennett's wife had helped with. Her name appeared alone on the preliminary drawings. Claire Hart, architect. Her maiden name. She stared at it longer than she expected. Ethan called several times. Claire let Rebecca handle the financial issues. For pregnancy matters, she agreed to one short conversation. "I want to be at the hospital," Ethan said. Claire was quiet. "I'm not promising that. She's my daughter." "Yes. Then I have rights. And responsibilities." The line went silent. Claire's voice remained calm. "We'll make parenting decisions through counsel and, if needed, mediation. Right now I need peace." Ethan sounded angry, then tired. "What do you want from me?" Claire looked at the unfinished library drawings. "Stop asking what you can demand." A long pause. "Start asking what kind of father you want to be." She ended the call before he could answer. 10 weeks after the gala, sunlight spilled through the cottage windows while Claire held her daughter against her chest. Lily Hart Bennett had arrived after 14 hours of labor with a furious cry and a full head of dark hair. Margaret cried when she saw her. Claire laughed when Margaret denied it. Ethan did not attend the delivery. Claire had chosen her sister and a close friend as support people. He met Lily the next day under arrangements Claire and her counsel were comfortable with. He stood beside the bassinet and stared at the baby for a long time. "She has your mouth," he said. Claire looked down at Lily. "She has her own." Ethan nodded. Months earlier, he might have corrected her. This time he did not. The divorce was still moving through the legal process. Property questions had not vanished. Parenting arrangements were being developed. There were lawyers, documents, deadlines, and days when Claire felt exhausted by all of it. But there were also ordinary mornings. Coffee at the drafting table. Lily sleeping in a wrap against her chest. Margaret arriving with too many blankets. The railway depot project moving from sketches to approved plans. Ethan began seeing Lily on a schedule. At first, Claire expected him to miss appointments. He missed one, then another. Claire documented both and said very little. The third time, Ethan arrived early. Then he kept arriving. He took a parenting class after a mediator suggested it. He learned how to warm a bottle without overheating it. He stopped bringing expensive gifts Claire had not asked for. One afternoon, when Lily was 5 months old, Ethan sat on the cottage floor stacking soft blocks while she knocked them over. Claire watched from the kitchen doorway. He looked up. "I was awful to you." She did not rescue him from the sentence. "Yes." He swallowed. "I kept thinking if I admitted what I was doing, I'd lose control of everything." "You did." "I know." Claire waited. Ethan looked at his daughter. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. That was new. I'm asking if I can keep learning how not to be that man with her." Claire considered him. "You don't learn it from saying the right thing once." "I know. You learn it by showing up." He nodded. So Claire let time answer. Not money. Not apologies. Time. Several months later, the divorce was finalized after counsel and mediation resolved the financial issues and established a parenting plan. Claire did not feel victorious when the final papers arrived. She felt quiet. A court order could end the marriage, but only time would show what kind of parents she and Ethan would become. On the first anniversary of the gala, Harbor House hosted a small exhibition about its restoration. Margaret asked Claire to speak. This time Claire knew in advance. She stood before photographs of the old building and told the audience about original plaster, hidden brick, and the value of preserving what still had structure while refusing to pretend every damaged thing should be saved. She did not mention her marriage. She did not need to. Lily sat in Margaret's lap in the front row. Ethan stood near the back. He had asked whether he should come. Claire had said, "If you're coming as Lily's father, yes." After the talk, Margaret handed Claire a framed copy of one of her original Harbor House drawings. Claire smiled. "You kept this?" "Of course." "Why?" Margaret looked offended. "Because it was good." They laughed. Later, at the cottage, Claire opened a small wooden box. Inside was the old gala place card. Claire Bennett. She had kept it without knowing why. Margaret sat across from her while Lily slept nearby. Claire ran a thumb over the letters. "For months, I thought Vanessa was taking my life." "She tried to take your position," Margaret said. Claire nodded. "That's the difference." She tore the card once. Then again. The sound was small. No cameras recorded it. No one shouted. Claire dropped the pieces into the recycling bin. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "That's less dramatic than the ballroom." Claire smiled. "I'm tired of dramatic." Lily made a soft sound from the bassinet. Claire went to her. Margaret watched as she lifted the baby. "You know," the older woman said, "there's an empty chair at my Sunday table now." Claire glanced back. "Whose?" Margaret smiled. "Whoever is invited with love." Claire looked at Lily, then toward the drafting table by the window. A year earlier, Vanessa had fought for a chair beside a millionaire because she believed the seat proved she had won. Ethan had believed he could decide where his wife belonged because his money and name had made too many people move when he entered a room. Claire had once believed losing that place meant losing herself. Now she knew better. A chair could be taken. A marriage could end. A title could change. But none of those things could erase the work Claire had done, the mother she had become, or the life she was building in her own name. She kissed Lily's forehead and pulled an extra chair toward the table. Not because anyone had assigned it, because she chose where it belonged.